Welcome to Revisit Books podcast, where we turn books into bite-sized wisdom you can use every day. Welcome you to this discussion. Today, we're diving into a book that's made waves globally. It started in Japan, but has really challenged millions to rethink, well, how they approach their own happiness and emotional lives.
That's right. We're talking about The Courage to be Disliked, How to Change Your Life and Achieve Real Happiness by Ichiro, Kishimi, and Fumitake Koga.
And it's not your typical self-help book, is it? The structure itself is pretty unique.
No, not at all. It's actually framed as a definitive explanation of Alfred Adler's individual psychology. But instead of just laying out theories, it uses this dialogue format. It spans 5 nights, a conversation between a, let's say, quite skeptical and frankly rather argumentative youth.
Yeah, he pushes back hard.
He really does. And he's talking with this calm, very patient philosopher. It really echoes those old Socratic dialogues, like Plato used.
And I think that format is crucial because honestly, some of the ideas in here are so counterintuitive, maybe even confronting, that you need that pushback. The youth basically voices all the doubts and objections that you, the listener, might be having.
Exactly. He's our stand-in. And all these challenging ideas come directly from Adler's work. Adler was a 20th century psychologist, often kind of overshadowed by the big names like Freud and Jung. But his individual psychology offers a radically different way of looking at things.
Radically different is right. The book actually calls Adler's philosophy a Copernican revolution for understanding happiness. That's a pretty bold claim.
It is. Think about what Copernicus did. He completely flipped the script on how we saw the universe. Everyone knew the Earth was the center, right? And he came along and said, actually, no, it's the sun. It shifted the entire model.
Okay, so if the standard view, maybe the Freudian view, is that our past, our traumas, our upbringing, basically things that happen to us determine our present happiness, what's Adler's big flip? How does he put the sun at the center?
The core idea, the real bombshell, is this. Happiness isn't something that happens to you based on your past. It's something you choose right here, right now. And conversely, unhappiness. That's also a choice you're making.
Wow. Okay, so regardless of what you've been through, trauma, difficult childhood, whatever you're saying, Adler argues that your current state of mind is chosen.
Essentially, yes. It completely turns that cause and effect thinking on its head. It moves away from etiology, the study of causes, like I am unhappy because of my past, towards teleology, which is the study of purpose or goals. It's not about what happened, but what goal is your current state serving now.
That sounds, on one hand, incredibly empowering, maybe liberating, but also, honestly, a bit terrifying, especially if you feel genuinely trapped by past events. It sounds like it puts a huge amount of responsibility on you.
It does both. Absolutely. And that's why Adlerian psychology is often called a psychology of courage. It takes courage to accept that level of responsibility. It's also called a psychology of use. It shifts the focus entirely away from what you were born with, or what happened to you, and on to what you do with your equipment, so to speak.
Like that Adler quote the book uses, "The important thing is not what one is born with, but what use one makes of that equipment."
Precisely. It puts the power and the responsibility firmly in the present moment with the present you.
Okay, let's really pin down who this kind of thinking is for. Who's the person listening right now who might really connect with this, or maybe really needs to hear it?
Well, I think it speaks to several kinds of people, and the youth in the book sort of embodies all of them. Firstly, it's definitely for anyone who feels stuck, completely overwhelmed, maybe feeling like their past dictates everything, past trauma, difficult family, lack of education, whatever it is.
The youth is definitely there. He's got this deep-seated lack of confidence, feels inferior about his background, his looks. He seems convinced he's just fundamentally flawed compared to others.
Right. He sees happy people as almost a different species. He envies them, but feels he can never be them because of who he is, based on his past. The book is for anyone trapped in that kind of comparison game, feeling like they drew the short straw and can't change it.
And then there's the person who's maybe not defined by past trauma, but by present anxiety about other people.
Ah, yes, the Ankus connector. I think many of us can relate to this at times. This is the person whose life revolves around trying to meet everyone else's expectations, constantly worried about how they're perceived, terrified of being judged, or especially of being disliked.
Living life walking on eggshells, basically, trying to please everyone.
Exactly. And the book argues that this constant need for external validation, this fear of disapproval, is the absolute enemy of freedom. It's a kind of self-imposed prison. So if you feel like you're living for other people's approval, this is talking directly to you.
And the third type.
This is the person who genuinely wants to change something significant in their life.
Hmm.
Maybe it's a career change, getting healthier, improving relationships. They know what they want. They might even know the steps to take, but they just feel blocked, paralyzed. Like they can't make themselves do it.
The I know I should, but person.
Precisely. And Adler's diagnosis for that block isn't a lack of ability or knowledge, it's a lack of courage. The fear of stepping out of the familiar, even if the familiar is uncomfortable, is just too great.
The book uses that analogy of the old car, right?
Yeah, it's a great one. Imagine your current life, maybe your current unhappiness is like an old beat-up car. It rattles, it's unreliable, maybe a bit embarrassing, but
Yeah.
you know it. You know its quirks, how it handles, what noises it makes. It's predictable, even in its flaws.
And changing your life is like being offered a brand new, shiny, high-performance car.
Right. It promises speed, efficiency, freedom,
Yeah.
but it's totally unknown. You don't know how it handles, what could go wrong. It represents the anxiety of the new, unpredictable self. And the fear is maybe this new life, this new self could actually be more painful, more unhappy than the familiar misery.
So we choose the devil we know. We make an unconscious decision not to change because staying put, even if it's bad, feels safer than the risk of the unknown.
Exactly. We choose perceived safety over potential happiness.
Mm.
And recognizing that choice, the choice to maintain the status quo for the sake of perceived security is the first step towards having the courage to actually change.
Okay, this is huge. Let's really break down these core ideas. We have to start with what you called the bombshell, the first pillar, which is essentially deny trauma, or maybe deny the deterministic power of trauma, the idea that our present is governed by our goals, not our past.
Yes, this is probably the most challenging concept for many people, and where Adler clashes most directly with, say, Freudian psychology. It boils down to etiology versus teleology.
Okay, break this down.
So etiology is the conventional view, very strong in Freud. It says your present state, the effect, is caused by past events, the causes. If you experience trauma or abuse in childhood, that causes your current anxiety, depression, or relationship problems. Past dictates present. A leads to B.
Makes intuitive sense. That's how we usually think about things.
It is. But Adler, in this book, championed teleology. Telos means purpose or goal. Teleology argues that we aren't driven by past causes, but by present goals. We are pulling ourselves towards a future purpose, even if that purpose is unconscious. The past only matters in how we use it right now to justify or support our current goal.
Okay, hold on. Let me play the youth here because this is where people get understandably upset. Are you saying someone who suffered horrific abuse isn't suffering because of that abuse, that their pain is irrelevant?
No, and this is the crucial distinction. Adler isn't denying the experience itself. He's not saying the pain wasn't real or the event didn't happen. What he's denying is its absolute causal power over your present moment. Teleology suggests you aren't suffering because of the past event, but rather you are using the memory and the effects of that event to achieve a present goal.
But what possible goal could be served by suffering? Why would anyone choose unhappiness?
Because, from a subjective standpoint, that unhappiness or the lifestyle built around it serves a purpose. It might be perceived as the safest or most practical way to navigate the world, or avoid something even more feared.
Can you give an example? The book talks about the friend who becomes a shut-in, a hikikomori.
Right. Etiology would say. He was bullied badly in school, maybe had critical parents, therefore he is now unable to leave his room. Cause and effect.
But teleology says...
Teleology asks, what goal does staying in his room achieve now? The goal might be to avoid the possibility of social failure or rejection, to avoid the demands of work or relationships, perhaps even to make his parents worry and give him constant attention. His anxiety and fear become the reason he gives himself and others for not venturing out. But the goal is the avoidance itself.
So the anxiety isn't an uncontrollable result of the past, but a manufactured state to serve a present purpose, like avoiding responsibility.
In the Adlerian view, yes. It's a way to avoid confronting what Adler calls life tasks. If he stays inside, he doesn't have to face work, friendship, love. He gets to be a special case. Stepping outside means becoming just another person who has to deal with life, and that's terrifying. So the unhappiness serves the goal of avoidance.
This reframing applies to emotions too, right? Like anger. The youth argues anger just happens, it's uncontrollable.
Yes, he uses the example of spilling coffee and yelling at the waiter. He sees it as an inevitable reaction. But the philosopher argues anger is actually a tool, a manufactured device used to achieve a goal, usually domination or control.
And the proof is that anecdote about the mother on the phone. Can you recount that? It's so clear.
It's a fantastic illustration. Imagine a mother is in the middle of a heated argument with her daughter. She's yelling, voice raised, full of fury. The phone rings. She picks it up. Instantly, her tone changes completely. "Oh, hello. Yes, Mrs. Davis. Yes, she's right here." Perfectly calm, polite, controlled. She has the conversation. She hangs up and immediately turns back to her daughter and resumes yelling right where she left off.
If the anger was truly an uncontrollable outburst, she couldn't just switch it off and on like a light.
Exactly. The instantaneous shift proves it was a performance. A tool she was using, the loud voice, the intimidating manner, to achieve the goal of overpowering her daughter, of making her listen, of asserting her authority. When a different goal emerged, appearing reasonable to the teacher, she put the tool away. When that goal was met, she picked the tool right back up again because it was useful for dealing with the daughter.
So anger is chosen, deployed strategically.
In this view, yes.
Yeah.
And if anger, which feels so visceral and uncontrollable, is actually a tool we can choose to use or not use, then maybe other states, like unhappiness or anxiety, also serve hidden goals and are, on some level, chosen too. And if they are chosen, they can be unchosen. That's the gateway to change.
Okay, so if we accept, even hypothetically, that we have more control over our internal state because it's driven by present goals, how does this connect to the outside world, to our relationships? You mentioned life tasks earlier.
Right. This leads directly to the second major pillar, navigating our interactions. Adler makes another huge claim here. All problems are interpersonal relationship problems.
All problems. That sounds extreme. What about, lack of money or health issues?
Think about it. If you were literally the only being in the entire universe, would you feel lonely, inferior, anxious about what others think? Would money even have meaning? These feelings, these problems, only arise in relation to other people. Even worries about health or money are often tied to how they affect our relationships or social standing.
Okay, I see the point. So, if all problems involve other people, and we can't just escape to another universe, how do we manage these interactions without driving ourselves crazy?
This is where the concept of the separation of tasks comes in. It's absolutely crucial for reducing friction and finding freedom in relationships.
Separation of tasks. How do we figure out what's my task and what's your task? Especially when things seem intertwined, like in families or workplaces.
The philosopher gives a very clear, almost brutally simple guideline. You ask the question, who ultimately is going to receive the result brought about by the choice that is made? Whoever bears the direct consequences of a choice, that's whose task it is.
Let's use the classic example from the book. A child who won't study. Parents often feel it's their job, their responsibility to make the child study.
Right. They push, they nag, they worry.
Yeah.
But using Adler's question, if the child chooses not to study, who ultimately faces the consequences? Who doesn't get the grades, who struggles in class, who maybe doesn't get into their desired school?
The child.
Exactly. The consequences fall directly on the child. Therefore, studying is the child's task. The parent's task might be to provide support, resources, a quiet place to study, but not to force the studying itself. That's crossing the boundary into the child's task.
But parents or managers or even just concerned friends will push back hard here. If I don't intervene, isn't that neglect? Am I not supposed to help them avoid negative consequences?
It's a natural reaction, but Adler argues this kind of intervention is often not really about the other person's well-being. It's often driven by the intervener's goals. The parent might be worried about what other people will think if their child fails. They want to look like a good parent. The manager might want their team's results to reflect well on them.
So it's self-interest disguised as concern, intrusion, not help.
Often, yes. It's about managing the intervener's own anxieties or desires under the guise of, it's for your own good. And this intrusion actually prevents the other person from taking responsibility for their own task and learning from the consequences. It fosters dependency.
So if direct intervention is harmful, what's the alternative? Just stand back and watch them fail.
The alternative is assistance, which respects the separation of tasks. It means making it clear that you are available to help, you are supportive, but only when asked. You don't meddle beforehand. It's like the saying, you can lead horse to water, but you can't make him drink.
Intervention is trying to force the horse's head into the water. Assistance is making sure the water is there if the horse decides it's thirsty.
Perfectly put. Assistance respects the other person's autonomy and their task boundary.
And applying this idea separating tasks is where the book's title gets its power, right? The courage to be disliked.
Absolutely. because what enslaves so many of us, it's the desperate desire for recognition. We crave praise, approval, validation, and maybe even more powerfully, we live in mortal fear of being disliked, criticized, or rejected.
So we constantly adjust our behavior, our opinions, even our appearance to try and manage how others see us.
Yes, we're constantly trying to fulfill other people's expectations, constantly guessing what they want, constantly seeking their approval. We essentially hand over control of our lives to the whims and judgments of others. We are living their tasks, the task of liking or disliking us instead of living our own.
So true freedom, in the Adlerian sense, comes from.
It comes from having the courage to live according to your own principles and goals, without being controlled by the fear of whether someone else will approve or disapprove. It's recognizing that how other people feel about you, whether they like you, praise you, criticize you, or hate you, that is fundamentally their task, not yours.
You literally cannot control their reaction. That's their business.
Exactly. You can control your actions, your contributions, your choices. But their internal response, that belongs to them. Accepting this requires immense courage, the courage to be disliked, because it means letting go of the need for universal approval, which feels deeply ingrained. But it's the only way to be truly free.
Wow, that is a massive shift. Okay, so we've talked about taking responsibility for our inner state via teleology and finding freedom in relationships via separating tasks. What's the next layer? Pillar 3 seems to tackle the underlying feeling that life is just one big stressful competition.
Yes. The third pillar is about shifting from a worldview based on competition to one based on community feeling. Adler saw the competitive mindset as incredibly damaging.
Why? Competition drives innovation and success, doesn't it?
It might seem that way, but if you view life fundamentally as a competition where your success depends on someone else's failure, or where resources and status are limited and you have to beat others to get them, then what does that make everyone else?
Potential rivals, enemies even.
Exactly. You can't truly trust anyone. You live in a constant state of anxiety and comparison. Even if you're winning the competition, you have the fancy job, the big house, you're constantly worried about losing your place, about someone else overtaking you. There's no real peace, no sense of security.
And this competitive view feeds directly into feelings of inadequacy, right? The constant measuring up.
Absolutely. This leads to what Adler calls feelings of inferiority. But he makes a really important distinction between a simple, objective feeling of inferiority and a crippling inferiority complex.
Okay, what's the difference there?
A feeling of inferiority in itself isn't bad. It's just a subjective judgment about yourself in relation to something. The book uses height. Maybe you're 61 inches tall. That's just a fact. Feeling inferior because of it is the value you attach to that fact, maybe compared to others. And that feeling can actually be healthy. It can be a spur for growth. I feel my knowledge in this area is lacking, so I will study harder. That's using the feeling as motivation.
Okay, so that's the feeling. What makes it a complex?
The inferiority complex arises when you start using that feeling as an excuse to avoid life's challenges. It becomes a justification for inaction. I'm not well educated, therefore I can't possibly succeed in this field, so I won't even try. It's using the feeling of inferiority to opt out of effort or risk.
It's like saying, my situation prevents me from succeeding.
Exactly. And often the complex has a hidden flip side, a kind of fabricated superiority. The person might implicitly be saying, if only I had been better educated, I would be incredibly successful. My real potential is huge. It's just blocked by this circumstance. It's a way to feel special without having to actually do anything.
And this connects to people who seem outwardly the opposite, the ones who constantly boast, the superiority complex.
Adler saw that as just another mask for a deep-seated inferiority complex. The person who constantly brags about their achievements, their connections, their possessions, they're desperately trying to convince themselves and others of their worth because deep down they feel profoundly inadequate. They're still trapped in that competitive vertical mindset, seeking validation through external status symbols.
So to escape this trap of competition and inferiority-superiority complexes, Adler says we need to shift our relationships from vertical to horizontal.
Precisely. We need to abandon vertical relationships which are based on hierarchy, power dynamics, comparing ourselves as above or below others. Instead, we need to cultivate horizontal relationships where we see others and ourselves as fundamentally equal. Different, yes, with different roles and abilities, but equal in human worth. Not the same, but equal.
And this thinking leads to another really controversial point in the book, the rejection of both praise and rebuke. That seems counterintuitive, especially praise. Isn't positive reinforcement good?
This trips a lot of people up. We're so conditioned to think praise is essential. But the philosopher argues that praise, fundamentally, is an act of judgment delivered from a position of perceived superiority. It's the passing of judgment by a person of ability on a person of no ability.
Can you give an example? Like the parent praising a child for doing a chore.
Yeah. A parent might say, wow, you did such a good job washing the dishes. It sounds nice. But would that same parent say that to their spouse or partner, an equal? Honey, you did such a good job taking out the trash. Probably not. The very act of praise often implies a hierarchy. I am in a position to evaluate your performance, and I deem it good.
So it subtly reinforces that vertical relationship and can create dependency, like the child starts doing things only to get praised.
Exactly. They learn to operate based on external judgment rather than internal motivation or a genuine desire to contribute. Rebuke obviously does the same thing from the negative side. Both are manipulations based on hierarchy.
Okay, if we throw out praise and rebuke, the main tools of parenting and management for centuries, what do we replace them with? How do we encourage positive behavior or acknowledge effort?
The alternative is encouragement. Unlike praise, which evaluates, encouragement acknowledges effort and contribution from a place of equality and gratitude. It focuses on the other person's worth and their helpfulness rather than judging their ability.
So instead of, good job washing the dishes, you'd say.
Something like, thank you, that was a big help.
Yeah.
Or, I really appreciate you contributing. Or simply noticing their effort. I see you've been working hard on that. It affirms their value as a contributor, helps them feel useful, and builds their own sense of capability and courage without creating that dependency on your judgment. It comes from a place of respect, not evaluation.
So shifting from evaluation to appreciation, from vertical judgment to horizontal acknowledgement.
Yes, and this whole shift away from competition, away from vertical relationships, towards equality and encouragement, is all building towards the ultimate goal of interpersonal relationships in Adlerian psychology: community feeling.
Community feeling. Gemeinschaftsgefühl, I think, is the German term. What exactly is that?
It's a deep, subjective sense that you belong. It's seeing others not as rivals, but as comrades, fellow travelers. It's feeling that you have a place, that you are part of a larger whole, that you are safe and accepted within the human community. It's the antidote to the isolation and anxiety caused by the competitive mindset.
And how do we get this feeling? Is it just about thinking nice thoughts about people?
No, it's attained through action, specifically through contribution to the common good. It comes from actively engaging in tasks, whether work, family, or community involvement, with the aim of being useful to others.
Okay, but doesn't that sound like we're just defining our worth by how useful we are? Like we have to earn our place by serving others. That sounds potentially like burnout or losing ourselves.
That's a really important clarification. The key is the subjective sense that I am of use to someone. It's not about objective measure or sacrificing yourself endlessly. It's about the internal feeling of worth that comes from knowing your actions make a positive difference, however small. The philosopher even says the essence of work is this contribution. When you feel useful, when you feel you're contributing positively to the community, however you define that community, you gain a profound sense of self-worth and belonging.
So it shifts the focus. Instead of what can I get from this person or how do I compare, it becomes what can I contribute here?
Exactly. And when you genuinely feel you are contributing, that you have value to others, you gain the confidence to accept yourself and trust others. It creates this positive feedback loop. Self-acceptance allows confidence in others, which enables contribution, which reinforces self-worth and belonging.
That's a powerful cycle. But life is messy. How do we maintain that focus on contribution, that community feeling when things get chaotic or we lose sight of the goal? This seems to lead into the final pillar, living right here, right now.
Precisely. The fourth pillar is about grounding all of this in the present moment. Live in earnest in the here and now. Adlerian psychology strongly rejects the common way we view life as a linear progression towards some future goal.
What do you mean by linear progression, like climbing a ladder?
Yeah, or climbing a mountain. We're taught to see life as a journey with a destination. Maybe it's graduating, getting the big promotion, reaching retirement, finding the one. The peak of the mountain is the goal. And this means that most of our actual life, the time spent climbing, is seen as just preparation, as being en route to the real life that starts when we reach the summit.
Which leads to constantly postponing happiness. I'll be happy when. I can relax after.
Exactly. We live in a state of perpetual anticipation, deferring joy and fulfillment to a future that may never arrive, or that might look different than we imagined. We treat the present as merely a means to an end, not as life itself.
So what's the Adlerian alternative if life isn't aligned to a destination?
Life is seen as a series of moments, like dots or like a dance. Each moment, each now, is complete in itself. We can only live in the here and now. There is no en route phase, because every step of the dance is the dance. Every moment is your life, fully realized.
Okay, if we ditch the idea of a fixed destination, the summit, doesn't that risk just wandering aimlessly? How do we know we're heading in a good direction if there's no final goal?
Instead of a fixed destination, Adler suggests we need a guiding star. Something constant that orients us, that helps us navigate the dance of moments without losing our way. And that guiding star, that constant point of reference for the here and now, is contribution to others.
It loops back again.
It does. If in each present moment your intention is oriented towards contributing, towards being useful in some way to your community, again, however broadly defined, then you are living fully and meaningfully right now. You don't need to worry about a far-off destination because your present actions are aligned with that guiding principle. You are always arriving.
And this connects to another intriguing idea you mentioned earlier, the courage to be normal. How does living in the now relate to being normal?
Well, think about people who don't live in the here and now, who are desperately focused on achieving some kind of special status. The philosopher talks about the pursuit of easy superiority. This is when people, often feeling inadequate, trying to stand out by being either exceptionally good or exceptionally bad.
Like the overachieving workaholic on one end or the rebellious delinquent on the other.
Exactly. Both are ways to get attention, to feel special, to avoid the perceived mediocrity of just being normal. Let's take the workaholic, because our society often praises that. Why does Adler see that as potentially problematic, as easy superiority?
I imagine because it allows them to avoid other parts of life.
Precisely. The extreme workaholic often uses their dedication to their job as a justification, what Adler might call a life lie, to avoid confronting other crucial life tasks, namely friendship and love intimacy. They can say, I'm too busy, my work is too important, I don't have time for relationships or family. Work becomes a convenient, socially acceptable excuse to sidestep the more challenging, vulnerable aspects of interpersonal connection.
So they're achieving superiority in one area, work, as a way to compensate for or avoid perceived failure or difficulty in others. Relationships, it's an escape.
It can be, yes.
Yeah.
An escape from the full spectrum of human experience. And the antidote, the courageous path, is accepting your ordinariness. It's having the courage to be normal, to not need to be constantly in the spotlight, either through spectacular success or dramatic failure. It's accepting yourself as you are, facing all your life tasks without needing the crutch of being special. Because, as the philosopher gently asks, in truth, isn't everybody normal?
So tying it all together, if we can accept ourselves, Pillar 1's goal via teleology, separate tasks to relate freely, Pillar 2, aim for community feeling through contribution instead of competition, Pillar 3, and focus that contribution on the here and now without needing to be special, Pillar 4. That seems to be the blueprint.
That's a great synthesis. It creates this reinforcing cycle. Self-acceptance, understanding your life is chosen now, not dictated by the past, leads to the courage for unconditional confidence in others, seeing them as equals, separating tasks, not fearing them as competitors or judges. This confidence frees you up for genuine contribution to others, the guiding star rooted in community feeling. And that contribution, experienced in the here and now, confirms your worth and deepens your self-acceptance. It all feeds back into itself.
It's elegant, but that first step still feels like the hardest. Finding that initial courage, the youth in the book basically asks, okay, great theory, but how do I actually get this courage? Can I just refill my tank somewhere?
Right. And the philosopher's answer isn't a technique or a trick. It's a simple, powerful call to action, quoting Adler himself. Someone has to start.
Meaning, you can't wait for conditions to be perfect. You can't wait for others to change first.
Exactly. You can't wait for the fear to go away.
Yeah.
You can't wait for permission. You have to be the one to initiate the change in your perception and your behavior, regardless of whether anyone else cooperates or understands. You hold the cards for your side of the interpersonal relationship.
Because if you start acting differently, if you stop competing, if you stop seeking approval, if you start separating tasks, if you treat someone as a comrade instead of a rival, the whole dynamic has to change, doesn't it? Even if the other person doesn't consciously change their approach.
Yes. Their old patterns might not work anymore in response to your new way of being. They might be forced to adapt, or at least the relationship itself transforms because your input has changed. And this leads to that final, really provocative thought from the philosopher.
The one where he says, "My power is immeasurably great," which sounds incredibly arrogant at first glance.
It does, take it out of context. But it's not about controlling others. It's about recognizing the immense power you have over your own life and your own perception of the world. If I change my goals, my interpretations, my actions, then my world inevitably changes. The focus must be entirely on transforming yourself and how you engage with your life tasks.
So the goal isn't to change other people through your actions, although that might happen as a side effect. The goal is your own freedom and authentic living.
Precisely. Change yourself. Live according to your own principles, oriented towards contribution. Others may shift in response, they may not. But your freedom doesn't depend on their reaction. Your freedom comes from your courage to live your own life, contribute to the community, and accept that their opinion of you is ultimately their task.
The courage to live freely by having the courage to be disliked. A challenging but ultimately perhaps liberating perspective. That's today's breakdown. While this discussion cannot replace the book's full text, it can offer a glimpse into its teachings. I hope you found this discussion helpful, and I look forward to sharing more. Let me know what book next you want to discuss.